In this video I'm going to show you how to create the curly cord for your telephone. Now this component is quite simple in some ways, but it uses some fairly high level and fairly complex commands. So starting in a new part, we're going to open up a sketch and we're going to simply make a circle on that sketch. Now I'm just going to put a dimension of 10 millimeters on that circle, even though it actually doesn't matter what the dimension is. Now this circle is going to be the driving circle that's going to form the basis for our curly section of the cord. And to create the curly section we're going to create a helix. So if you go to Insert Curve and go down to Helix Spiral, what we want to select, I've already got these pre-selected, we want to have a pitch of 8 millimeters and revolutions of 15 revolutions. So first off, I want to make sure that we've selected pitch and revolution. We have a few other options here, but we're going to use pitch and revolution. The pitch has got to be 8, revolutions at 5. Now the start angle is very important that that's set to 0, because we're going to create a helix to use as a sweep profile, and we need to have that starting in the right spot. So hit OK, and now you have a curve that looks a little bit like a spring there. This is also very good for making springs. I guess the curly cord is quite similar to a spring anyway. So the next thing we need to do is to make the profile that we're going to use to sweep along our curve. So we're going to make that profile on the top plane. So I can sketch on the top plane, and then we're going to make a circle which is going to be the profile that we're going to use. We're going to make that circle 4 millimeters diameter. Now we're going to make a center line, and we're going to start the center line on the origin and make that center line horizontal. That center line also needs to be 5 millimeters long, and then we're just going to drag our circle and use the automatic relations to snap to the end of that line. So that means we've got a 4 millimeter diameter circle 5 millimeters away from the origin horizontally. Okay, so we hit OK. Now we're going to go to Insert Boss Sweep and we're going to select that. We need to select a profile and a path. The profile is that circle we've just created, and the path that we're going to use is the helix, and as you can see that's the shape that we want to create. Hit OK and it'll look something like that. The next feature we're going to create is just a little curve just to get the cable heading in the right direction. So on the end, create a sketch on this end face. Selecting that face or selecting the edge, go to Convert Entities. The next thing we need to do is to create a center line which will be horizontal and needs to be 5 millimeters away from the center of the circle. And what we're going to do next is create a revolve boss base 90 with an angle through an angle of 90 degrees, and we need to make sure that by default it always seems to go in the wrong direction. We want to have it in this direction. Hit OK and there we have it. So what we're going to create next is the continuation of the cable. We're not going to have the curly, we've done the curly section, so now we need to do the relatively straight section. Now if we just did a completely straight extrusion, this part would look very artificial. So in reality cables are never straight, and they've always have a bit of a curl in them. What we're going to do is we're going to create what we call a 3D sketch as opposed to a 2D sketch. Now in the past we've always created sketches either on a plane or on a face, on a flat face. With 3D sketches we can create a sketch in 3 dimensions, so that means each point is in a different dimension. They're a little bit more complicated, and I think I said in the past don't use them. This is one of the few cases where they're actually very useful. So if we select 3D sketch from did I get 3D sketch from the sketch menu. We want to start on this plane here. What we're going to do is we're going to create a spline. So this is going to be a 3D spline. Now what it'll ask you for is the starting point. If we hover over this circular face here, we can actually select the center of the face, and that's what we want. Now, as you can see, we're dragging a line out. Now, if we rotate around, you can see that that's dragging a line on a certain plane. It's almost creating its own little plane as it draws. But that actually isn't the direction we want to go in. We want to go vertically away from that circular face. So the way to do that is to use the tab key. Now we can tab between the various three planes. You see now we're drawing in a more vertical direction, and we can then, which is what we want. Now there are three options obviously for that. That's the plane we want to draw on. So our first point wants to be about here. As you can see, that's sort of gone vertically away from the face. The next point, if we zoom out, we can hit the tab key and we can draw on a different plane, hit the tab key again, and we can create our third point. Now we can keep creating points. Probably 3 or 4 points is sufficient. So we hit escape, and as you can see now we've created a line which is actually a spline which is actually in 3 dimensions. Very useful little feature. Now the only thing that we have here is if we click on the end of this spline, like all splines, we have this little control handle, and we can modify the spline and get it pretty much exactly as we want. The challenge here is to try and get this particular first section of your spline to be completely vertical and completely tangent to this first face. So the way we do it is if we click on the top of this control curve, what we can see on the left hand side is we have a few options for adding relations. What we can do is we can select this to be along X, along Y, or along the Z axis. Now you can just click on these through trial and error and get it the right way, or you can look down here to this little triad down the bottom. Now if you rotate the thing around, you can see that the Z axis is in the vertical direction, and that's the direction we want this to be in. So once you've selected this top control point, if you go to the click along Z, what it will do is it will snap to the Z axis, which is essentially our vertical axis in this particular sense, and that will be the direction we want it to be in. Okay, so that's going to be our sweep guide curve. What we need next is a profile to sweep along that curve, and in the same way we'll just create, this time we're going to create a normal sketch, and we're going to select that edge and convert entities, and all we need to do now is go to features and use the swept boss base, select your profile and your path, and there we have our little bit of curled section. Okay, so all we need to do is repeat that process on the other end, and here's one I prepared earlier. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a fairly advanced feature into this. We're going to use the flex feature. So if we go insert feature, go down to where it says flex. Now you can see on the left hand side that we have a lot of different options. We have bending, we have twisting, tapering and stretching. In this case we're just going to go for bending, which is one of the simpler options. The first thing it asks for is a body for you to flex. So we've only got one body in this part, so we're going to select that. And what you'll see next is that it's created 2 trim planes on the end of the part. Now if we leave the trim planes where they are, it will flex the entire body. But what we can do is we can use these grab handles to drag the trim planes down so that we're only flexing a smaller section in the middle, and that's really all we need to do at this stage. The next thing we need to do very simply is just change this angle to tell it what angle we want to flex the thing through. Let's see, we're probably looking at around 90 degrees is probably about right. And all we need to do is hit OK and sit back and wait. Depending on how powerful your computer is, this may well take quite a while. And it also depends on how much of the curly section of the cable you're trying to flex, because it's quite a lot to ask of the computer. But there you have it. That's our curly cable, and all that needs to be done now is to be inserted into the assembly.